All right, today I'm going to show you how to write an introduction. Just know that when I'm showing you how to write the introduction, what I'm doing is showing you an introduction that comes after you've already developed your body paragraphs. Many people think that they need to start the introduction before they write their body paragraphs, but it's hard for you to know what to do in terms of introducing something if you haven't really developed at least an outline or the body paragraphs. Once you develop your outline or your body paragraphs, then you can go ahead and create the introduction using the strategies that we talk about today. I'm going to talk about the introduction done in 3 different ways. And then I'm going to talk to you about the 4 strategies that you can use in the first way, and then there's something the second way, which is the transition, and then the last part is the thesis statement. So here we go. Whenever I think of an introduction, I think of this kind of shape, and in this shape, I break it down into 3 different categories. And this is the way that your introduction is going to appear to your readers. You have the first part of your introduction, which starts with 4 different strategies. And then you have your, and in this, the purpose of the introduction at large is to connect to the reader. At some point, you might have heard somebody say that the purpose of the introduction is to grab the reader's attention, or the purpose of the introduction is to go over what it is that you're going to talk about in the essay. But I'm not going to talk about the introduction in that way. I'm going to talk about the introduction being the way in which we would handle any relationship. The start of any relationship starts with some sort of connection. We connect to the person who we're in a relationship with, and when you're sitting down to write an essay, you have just entered a relationship between you, the writer, and the reader. And so we want the purpose of the introduction to be to simply connect to the reader. After you connect to the reader, then you'll have all of your body paragraphs that you should have already developed, or at least you have an outline for all of the body paragraphs that you have developed. And notice that I have way more body paragraphs than maybe what many people were taught in high school, where they have a 5-paragraph essay. In college, you're often be asked to write way more than 5 paragraphs. For the purpose of this unit, my students have been asked to either write 6 to 9 different body paragraphs based on the content that we have been going over the last couple of weeks. The last part of the introduction is where we're actually going to start with today. So the last part of the introduction, which is phase 3 of the introduction, is what is called the thesis statement. And the thesis statement is nothing more than the main idea of the entire essay. And it's so quiet in here. I'm not used to doing a lecture where it's so quiet. I wish that you understood what the feel was like. It kind of feels weird talking to a camera, but hopefully you'll get the concept here and you'll be able to write it as we're doing it. So the thesis statement is the main idea, and it usually follows this kind of formula. In the thesis statement of any essay that you write, you want to have the topic properly represented in that thesis statement. Then you want to have the stance associated with whatever it is that your professor or professors are asking you to do. And then after the stance or somewhere in that thesis statement, you should have some sort of supporting ideas associated with it, or supporting, details associated with it. And so we have the topic. The topic of this essay is reading and writing. So we know we need to have the terms reading and writing in this essay. The stance is that we're using words to either compare. We're going to talk about the way in which they either have some commonalities or similarities. And so we're talking like we actually are going to compare reading and writing, or we're going to parallel reading and writing, or we're going to highlight certain types of similarities. The stance of any essay that you have is usually based on what it is that your professor is asking you to do. For let's say the next essay, an essay that I do in Comp 2, it's an argumentative essay, and so you're either for or against a particular topic. So that would be the stance. The topic, let's say if the topic was on guns on campus, then you would have to be for or against, and then you'd have to give your reasons why. For this particular essay, the supporting details is that we're comparing reading and writing to concepts related to race and concepts related to gender. And so we know that we are, and then we're actually talking about reading and writing. That was a third source article, but since we've already mentioned reading and writing here, we don't have to put that in our supporting detail. So now what we must do, before we talk about the strategies for how to start an introduction, we want to make sure we develop this. Once we develop this, then we can do steps 1 and 2. And so a really generic thesis statement, everybody in the room right now, there are about 25 people in the room. And so everyone in the room, we're all going to be writing the same type of essay. And so I'm going to give you the example thesis statement. Please don't use the exact words that I put on here for my thesis statement. Please don't use it. But you'll just change it up, even though it's going to have many of the same commonalities. All right, so here we go. I'm just going to take it and just go right in order. Reading and writing have similarities to concepts developed in Deborah Tannen's essay on gender and Peggy McIntosh essay on race. And it really is that simple. You're just, for my class, they knew they had these two articles, and in those two articles, they just simply had to take the concepts in those articles and then compare it to reading and writing. There are other types of ways in which you could have a thesis statement that is a little bit more developed, and it would be something like, in the relationship between the reader and writer, people can see the ways in which the concepts presented focus on the miscommunication as highlighted in Tannen's article on gender, and the concepts presented in Peggy McIntosh's article on race. But I don't have to say these authors' names and what they're writing about in my thesis statement if I know that I'm going to mention those authors' names somewhere else. I have to do one or the other, though. I have to either mention those authors and what they're writing about here in the first part of my introduction, or I need to mention it in the thesis statement. Once you develop the thesis statement, then you can focus on steps 1 and 2. Come back to part 2 of the video and I'll focus on steps 1 and 2.